From each happily ever after, every wish upon a star. Let's break down the movies that shaped who we are. From memory lane to now and everything in between. The most famous of films to the ones we've never seen. Decade by decade, all the times we laughed and cried. And with a little pixie dust, they will all take flight. Reliving the feelings, and we're trying our very best. And if they mean the same to you, please be our guest. So hop aboard, we would love to have you as we hang with a certain mouth, the whole gang too. If you love nostalgia stuff, we hope this does the trick. Thanks for joining us as we deep dive the magic.
Hi, and welcome back to the Deep Diving the Magic podcast. I'm KJ.
And I'm Jeffrey. And we have made it to our 30th film, and we've made it to a brand new year. The 30th Disney feature-length film from June 8th, 1956 is a film called The Great Locomotive Chase. The Great Locomotive Chase is kind of like a live-action Western style film coming from the Civil War era. I had definitely not seen this before. I don't think I've ever even heard of it before we dove into it. But would you like to start us off with maybe a quick synopsis or your thoughts?
Sure. During the Civil War, Union spy Andrews and his men volunteer to steal a Confederate train and drive it to the Union territory while destroying the Confederate railroad system along the way.
Yeah, that's pretty much the gist of the movie. It is live action, like we said. It's not on Disney Plus. It is the return of the actor who plays Davy Crockett. I think his name is Fess Parker, maybe. I will report back on that on a later date.
Definitely Fess. I don't know
yeah.
if the last name is
right,
but yeah.
But it's definitely a film. It's definitely
I had never heard of it either, so
it's not on Disney Plus. But before we just keep blabbering about it, you want to go ahead and just dive right in?
Sure.
All right, so as we start, I would like to start off by saying that some of the parts of this film were kind of hard to follow. It kind of jumps around. It's kind of the story isn't necessarily linear. I don't know. It was kind of hard to follow, so I want to start off with that on the notes. But so we do start off with the northern, like you said, the Union Army. They're visited by Andrews, and they are assigned a mission, like you mentioned, to hijack a train behind Confederate lines and destroy bridges along the railroad to delay Mitchell's attack on Chattanooga and hopefully put an end to the war. Which is kind of what we discussed in the synopsis. It's right out the bat. We kind of dive right into it. So then the men meet up the next night to discuss the plan. They're trying to recruit others, and they're discuss the details that they're going to meet in. The end goal is to meet in Marietta, Georgia. They will be under the disguise of Kentuckians escaping the rule of the Yankees to join a Southern regiment from Flemingsburg, Kentucky. And that's we get on our way. So there's a lot of hijinks along the way of them being these Union soldiers that are in disguise as a Kentucky regiment from Flemingsburg. There's a Disney storm right away. So that checks it off the list while they're traveling to their destination. So because of this storm, they're on their way. They reach the Tennessee River, but it's impassable because of the storm. So they have to ask for a spot at the inn for the night, and they have to pretend to be Southerners, which is what we talk about how the hijinks begin. But their story does work. Anything to add on that?
It is kind of humorous throughout, because some of the people posing as Confederates and Southerners, you can tell it's very hard for them to do
Some
that.
harder than others, for sure. Yeah.
Like it's killing them to play this part that they don't want to be, and a few times it looks like they almost blow their cover because of it.
Oh yeah, we'll get there on that for sure.
Yeah.
So they're in this inn, the Southern Inn, by the Tennessee River, and they eat at a table full of Confederates who are asking them questions about their history and everything. One guy refers to the opposition as the damn Yankees.
Which actually, since you say that, it says, like when I was doing my research on this, and some trivia facts, it said that the use of damn Yankees could possibly be the first use of a curse word in a Disney film.
Yeah, I mean, I know that like the damn Yankees is kind of like a famous saying. I think it's actually like a play or like a musical trope anyway.
Probably.
But yeah, so it's that actually makes sense. I don't think I that we've ever come across that. So check that off the list for
Although
your
there
bingo
is,
cards.
yeah, there also is somebody like one of the characters sits there and says, "Damn Yankee ain't swearing, mother," and you know it.
Oh yeah,
So I guess
same
they,
same scene.
yeah, but
They try
yeah,
to cover themselves.
yeah, there you go.
Um, so the people at the table, they're trying to recruit these men into their southern regiment,
Hmm.
but they keep to their excuse and it works. But then there's a knock on the door, and it's Andrews, the soldier, the general, I guess, from earlier that had them start on this expedition. He
Hmm.
comes in, um, and everyone's like, "Oh no, what's going to happen?" Because obviously he's their their general. But he tells them that there's great news and talks about a great Confederate victory, and he toasts to Confederacy, and people buy it and they gather around the piano and they sing some Dixie songs. Anything to say about that?
There is a guy that joins them from Massachusetts, and
You can tell
the
by his voice.
yeah, the leader tells him you might not want to talk.
Do they sound like me?
No, they don't sound like you at all.
Um, so they gather on the piano to sing some Dixie songs. Some of the men, especially you mentioned this gentleman earlier, but his name is Campbell.
Hmm.
He struggles to keep the facade up.
Yeah,
He's like a big burly guy. He struggles to keep the facade up of
yeah.
everything. So that they do survive the night, but they leave in the morning. They leave for Chattanooga in the morning.
Hmm.
The storm had stopped. They do board a Confederate train that is again singing more anti-Yankee songs.
Yeah.
Um, Campbell, the gentleman that we were talking about, he gets questioned why he has a Yankees gun, but he comes up with an excuse that he took it off of a dead Yank, and the train staff believes him.
Yeah.
Um, so they do reach Marietta safely, and they stay overnight at a railroad hotel in preparation for their big day, and they go over the plan once again.
Hmm.
Anything they add on this, or so they decide that they're going to steal the train while the crew is at a breakfast stop in the morning.
Hmm.
Now you love breakfast. Can you imagine if you were eating breakfast and someone stole your train?
No.
So they arrive at the breakfast spot, but they begin to get ready for the heist, and it's in broad daylight. It's right next to a Confederate base, and um, they pull it off though. But then they're celebrating their stolen train inside of the train, but then
Hmm.
the Southern soldiers start to pursue them right away
On
because
another train.
it's in bright daylight. Not another train yet. We'll get there on that one. Um, so they're on this train and they first come across some repairmen, but they lie their way past that.
Hmm.
And then go ahead. You say
I wasn't
that?
gonna say anything.
They begin to attempt to destroy train tracks. They don't have that many tools, but they're using what they have to kind of destroy things as they're going. Um, the Confederate conductor, whose train it was, he runs to town for help because they find out that not only is the train gone, but they cut the lines so no like telegrams can go out either.
Hmm.
So this guy, this train conductor, this one whose train was stolen, he becomes the like the he wants his train back.
Yeah.
Um, so they some Southern troops and the conductor, whose name I'll mention later, I didn't write down now. They get on like a one of those like I think they're called like a hand car,
Hmm.
um, to try to catch up and chase them down, but that doesn't really work. Um, but then while they're on the train, they do find out that General Mitchell has taken to his plan early, and the Confederate Army is now running freight down south. So they're a little bit late for what they were trying to do, but they're
Hmm.
gonna continue on their mission to go down there. But they also come across another train that's going the other way that they lie their way past. But then in the meantime, the Confederates that are in pursuit are able to board that other train to chase them. The one that had passed them, but they're able to like they have to board it to pursue the escaped train, except they have to take the whole entire train and chase them in reverse because they were going the other way on the track and they couldn't switch tracks. So the Confederate train is in hot pursuit of this stolen train, the great locomotive chase, you'll say, but they're driving in reverse the whole time, which will be kind of becoming like a reoccurring thing in the film.
And you can actually go and visit these two locomotives. Like
Really?
they still have them. They're both kept in two different locations. One of them for sure I think is in Georgia, and the other one might be in North Carolina. Not 100% sure on where that location is, but
Does it,
you can actually see like the actual live trains, I guess, in the museum.
does it win the award for most gone backwards train?
No
So
idea. I kind of found this part of the movie boring, and I found it hard to follow, so I didn't write a lot about it.
so while this train is going backwards, trying to pursue the runaway or the stolen locomotive, they are able to tell the telegram employee to send out a message that their train has been captured by federal spies.
Mhm.
And then as the raiders, the Union are they're going about their day. They're destroying more tracks, but then they hear the Confederate train approaching them,
Mhm.
in reverse. Um, and they are attempting to flee, obviously. So they're throwing logs on the tracks. They're trying to slow down the pursuers who are going in reverse. Um, but they detach one of their own train cars on the track to have it free travel down towards the Confederate train,
Mhm.
um, who have to switch their train to now going forwards to get away from the free traveling train car. But then once it slows down enough, they're able to push it
Mhm.
to um, become part of their backwards chase their train. So I was wondering if this is the scene where that gave Disney idea with the runaway railway, because that was a runaway railway car.
I mean, if that was the case, then they waited a long time.
Um, so, but unfortunately, the Raiders have to like stop to like refill up on water and wood because you need water and wood to burn for the steam engines. But and then also in the meantime, the telegram arrives.
Mhm.
So, um, and then while they're attempting to refill, they have to quickly hop back aboard because the Confederate reverse train shows up behind them.
Yeah.
So again, the great locomotive chase is on.
So, did you learn about this at all in
No,
history?
not at all.
Because I feel like it should have probably been something that was talked about
I
in
didn't even know it
history.
was a real thing until you said so.
I didn't know it was a legit thing either. And then when we were watching it, I kind of like thought to myself, well, I guess that makes sense because they said that like the Confederates lost the war because the Northerners cut off supply chains and took over the railways. And I was like, well, that would make sense. So I guess this is kind of the turning point of what that did. I don't know.
I mean,
But
big news.
it wasn't really talked about in our school. And I think like we've talked about it in the past with some of your friends. Like, I guess like schools teach things differently and
Mhm.
stuff about like certain things in the past. But we didn't talk about this. So I didn't know if you guys talked about it.
I mean, not that I remember, but
Okay.
again, I had not heard of this film either. Um,
Yeah.
so while the Raiders are trying to flee, they try to set up another another trap. I'm sorry, on the tracks.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and but they avoid it, and in the process of avoiding it, they're able to shed the loose boxcar at the same time. So now they're just the train going backwards, chasing them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but at this point, the Raiders are getting stressed, and they're trying to convince Andrews to stop the train to fight, but he's very strongly against it. He's very much trying to carry out his orders.
Yeah.
Um, they in a last in a last ditch effort, they decided that they're going to attempt to light the final boxcar on the train. They're going to light it on fire in hopes that it will light the train bridge on fire. They're going to drop the brake on it, and they're going to light it on fire to hope that it catches the train bridge on fire, which will then stop the pursuing great locomotive chase. But the reverse Confederate train does show up, and they risk their lives to being burned alive to undo the brake of the burning train car, and they push it out of the way, which they successfully do before the bridge catches on fire. And then the pursuit's happening, more stress, but then the Union train is quickly running out of water and wood, so things aren't going as planned, and they're being pursued by this backwards train. So then they decide that their only choice is to fight. So they do hop off the train and prepare to do what they can do. But then, unfortunately, in a very inopportune time, the cavalry of Confederate troops begin to arrive because the telegram arrived to them, kind of like that scene in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea when they that was message in a bottle, but this is the Confederate telegram comes out, so then more and more cavalry show up to attack this train that is now broken down. So Andrews sends some of the men to flee into the wilderness, but they are all chased by the cavalry. And the Confederates regain the train, and the locomotive chases are all over. So then the raiders who are captured, they're put on trial, and they lie about wanting to join the Confederacy as sympathizers, but they're locked away because their lies no longer work.
Yeah, and they basically all said they were from the exact same area.
So it gave it away that they were all from Flemingsburg, Kentucky.
Yeah. And they should learn how to lie better.
I mean,
I'm sure the guy from Massachusetts opened his mouth and they were like, yeah, okay.
So the newspaper begins to press, though, about how a small group of Yankees almost took down the Confederacy.
Yeah.
Which upsets the Confederacy. So then they transfer these prisoners, of course, by train, to another prison where they find out that they are going to be hanged.
Yeah.
Hanged for war crimes. So then, to keep the morale up, they all start to sing songs while they're in prisons because, the actor has all that practice from when he was Davy Crockett at the Alamo for singing to keep the morale up.
This worked in my last movie.
That's
Let's
right.
try it here.
But it worked because while they were singing, one of the men is able to break the chain that's connecting them all together. So they keep singing so the guard doesn't notice that they're trying to free themselves. And then they kind of make a plan to escape.
Yeah.
To break out, basically. They ambush the guard and they begin to fight the men in the prison yard. They survive their gunfire. They have, they're using fists and handmade weapons, and they're trying to survive. They do climb over the wall, but Andrews kind of falls behind, but Campbell stays to save Andrews and to fight the guards to let everybody else flee, but they're kind of taken down by like the numbers game.
Yeah.
So, but the runaway escapees are also recaptured. So Andrews thanks Campbell for coming back to him while they were chained up, because Andrews and Campbell didn't really see eye to eye a lot in the movie. Campbell was more of a fight guy. Andrews was more of a follow my orders type deal. So, but now it's time for them to be executed. But before, this is actually a really strange scene that I didn't understand. But before they're executed, Andrews requests a visit from Fuller, who was the conductor of the train, the one that won the award for the driving backwards. So he requests Fuller, the conductor of the train he stole, to come visit. Now that's like a weird request. Some people ask for last dinners. This guy asks for the guy who he's trying to dupe into come visiting him. But Fuller does visit Andrews, and Andrews apologizes that they were each fighting in their own way, and that he says that he won't be alive to see the day that the war ends, and the two shake hands in kind of a tense scene. What do you think about?
I don't really have much thoughts on it. It was weird, like you said, so I was hoping it would be over soon.
Oh, be nice.
This was not one of my favorites, sorry.
So then after they shake hands, it does, speaking of getting towards the end, it cuts it cuts to after the war when the 8 surviving escapees are being awarded the Medal of Honor, and it is said that Andrews has the honor of history, meaning that he did die from his war crimes. Um, but the locomotive chase was celebrated by the victors. So they were receiving medals of honor, meaning the war was over
Hmm.
and their heroism helped the war, which I guess ties it into being a real
Yeah.
thing. Um,
Well, I mean,
Go ahead.
after it, like I said, I did sit there and think that would make sense because they did say that the major things that was the downfall to the Confederacy was the lack of supplies. You couldn't get food in, you couldn't get weapons, and like at that point in time, railway was the main way of we
Mhm.
didn't have like trucks that like delivered everything like we do today. So, I mean, you take the railway down and you're pretty much stuck. So I was like, well, I guess that makes sense. That must have been like a legit thing. And then, like I said, the two main locomotives in here you can actually visit. They are in two separate museums, but I didn't. I thought I wrote them down where they were, but I think one of them for sure is in Georgia, but I think the other one might be in like North Carolina or something.
Yeah.
I've never seen it.
So it does, wrap it up by saying that like the war was over and their efforts obviously won them the Medal of Honor.
Hmm.
But that is the end of the film.
Yeah.
Anything to add that you had for like tidbits or backstories?
So it was the eighth live action film produced by Disney. It was filmed in North Carolina and Georgia. Um, the film, there's only 16 raters. In actual reality, there were 20 that participated
Yep.
in the raids. Um, and then an error in time was because they had mentioned Robert E. Lee, but he did not actually take command of the Northern Virginia Army until um, June 1st, 1862, which was 1.5 months after the locomotive
Oh,
chase.
well, he's next in line.
So, um, yeah, it's really all I.
How about a rating?
Um, the rating was a 6.8 out of 10 by IMDb. I rated it a 7, but to be honest, it was probably more like a 5 to me.
It just kind of was confusing. It jumped
It
around.
was confusing, it jumped around, and at points it was just excessively dry. It felt like there wasn't, it didn't feel like a lot of action like you would think.
Yeah, and it might be a history buff's favorite movie.
But at that time, it might have been like, that might have been like a, wow, it's a
Michael Bay.
lot of action. Yeah, it might have been something like that. But
I mean, again, it could be a history buff's favorite film.
well, probably not because from what I read, there was a lot of,
Inaccuracies.
yeah, differences. But they didn't really contain it well. But
Well, we would love to hear if you liked this film. It's not on Disney Plus, so if you happen to have seen it,
if
um,
you own it,
yeah.
let us know.
But we would love to hear. But before we dive into that part, would you like to see if this film has made it onto your list upon a star for the first 30 films? Here is our definitive top 10 lists
So
for 30 films.
it does not make my list of top 10.
And what do we got for your list of upon a star? Top
So
10?
I have Dumbo, Lady and the Tramp, The Three Caballeros, Peter Pan, Alice in Wonderland, Fantasia, Saludos Amigos, The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad, Bambi, Snow White, and the Seven Dwarfs.
My list upon a star through the first 30 Disney feature length films, the definitive top 10 list is not changing because it is Peter Pan at number one, Alice in Wonderland at number two, Pinocchio at three, The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad at four, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Lady and the Tramp, Three Caballeros, Cinderella, Dumbo, and Bambi finishing up the definitive top 10 list of the first 30 films. But again, we would love to hear. Sorry if we were dry about your favorite film, but if we were, send us a message. Send us, deep diving the magic pod at gmail.com. We're on YouTube, we're on Spotify, we're on Instagram. Tell your friends. There's 30 episodes for them to take their train in reverse to go catch up on. But on our next film, a film that we travel 1 month into the future. They were busy at the time. From July of 1956, for the return of our dear friend, Mr. Davy Crockett, for Davy Crockett and the River Pirates. Will we have the same thoughts that we did in the last one? You'll have to tune in next time, taking your train forward to find out.
Will this one make our top 10? Come back and find out, I guess.
We'll see you then.
Thanks for deep diving the magic.
Bye.
Bye.